So let's double click on phytochemicals to begin with here. So you say plants' stress responses build our own stress responses. So what's happening here? How does ingesting phytochemicals, and I may get you to comment on what phytochemicals are for anyone who's unclear there, but how does ingesting these compounds actually make us healthier?
So phytochemicals are plant chemicals, and they give fruits, vegetables, and plants their colors and their flavors. And so essentially a strawberry, the brighter it is in color, the sweeter and juicier it tastes, the higher phytochemical it has. And phytochemicals are non-nutritive, meaning that they don't add calories. So they're not like the macromolecule, the macronutrients that there's so much debate around, like the fat, the carbs, and the proteins. But I think that they have been forgotten in that conversation and all the debates and their role of importance in our human health. So phytochemicals, I think, are just nature's pharmacy. They contain the antioxidants, the anti-inflammatories, the anti-cancer properties of plant-based foods. And the historical viewpoint towards these phytochemicals was that when we consume these phytochemicals, they give us antioxidants, and that helps us counter the free radical damage or the oxidative stress that we incur throughout our lives and through exposures, through pollution, through smoke, through sunlight, through our body's own metabolic processes and our mitochondria. And that really has been the predominant thinking in the last 50 years of nutrition science. But the kind of puzzle within that is that the amount of phytochemical that we absorb, the antioxidants that we absorb when we consume these plant-based foods, are on the order of like nanomolar amounts. I mean, they're such small amounts. And the amount that we would need to neutralize free radical damage is more in the order of like micromolar amounts. So the numbers simply just didn't add up. And the kind of viewpoint is that what is really happening is a hormetic response. When we eat these plant chemicals, what happens is they activate our body's innate defense systems. They ramp up our antioxidant defenses. And that is why a small amount can lead to such beneficial effects. So the natural question then is, why does our body perceive these as stressful? Like, why does it have this effect on our body? And the reason is that when we consume these plants, the plants have made the phytochemicals as part of their stress response. When plants are exposed to drought, to ultraviolet light, to predators, they make phytochemicals to build their disease resistance. They make these phytochemicals as pesticides to deter us as humans and as well as insects from eating them. And so they're essentially toxins. And when we consume these, our bodies evolve ways to rapidly detoxify these plant toxins. We absorb only a small amount and then we rapidly eliminate them. But that small amount is just enough to stress our cells and trigger these adaptive mechanisms. And it really speaks to this deep relationship that we have evolved with plants over, the existence of, our species, that we've grown to depend on these plants to activate our ability to become more resistant to all these environmental exposures. So it not only ramps up our antioxidant defenses, but it ramps up all these repair mechanisms that we're talking about. It helps us repair our DNA, repair our proteins, increase autophagy, increase our mitochondrial capacity. So the phytochemicals are these integral pieces to us becoming our healthiest selves.
So what are people overlooking online? There are certain people who say, as you just mentioned, that these are part of a plant's defense system and could be considered as toxins, who say there is no reason to be consuming these. At any level, they are toxic to humans. What are these people overlooking?
They're overlooking that these are toxins, but they're not toxic. I mean, that's really the key here. That our bodies need a small amount of stress. And with a lack of exposure to these toxins, we cannot be our healthiest selves. If you look at studies such as the Global Burden of Disease study, which is one of the largest scale studies looking at the association of diet with mortality. So the Global Burden of Disease study looked at dietary intake over 27 years, 195 countries. And what they found was that lack of these plant-based foods, so lack of phytochemicals and fibers and other components of plant-based foods from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, contributed more to global mortality than removing things such as processed meats or red meats or sugar sweetened beverages. And what was really profound is the magnitude of effect. So removing what these foods that are often vilified, like sugar sweetened beverages, the amount of mortality attributed to those was such a smaller amount than the mortality benefit, or I should say the mortality attributed to not getting enough of these plant foods. And for example, if you just take inadequate intake of whole grains, it had a 30-fold higher magnitude of contribution to mortality than removing, again, these vilified foods. So I think it just speaks to how critical and vital it is for us to incorporate plant food. And the message is that you don't have to change your baseline diet to benefit from adding plant food, right? So whether a person's current diet or preference is vegan, whether it's omnivore, carnivore, whatever dietary pattern you choose to follow, the simple addition of plant-based foods can reduce mortality and improve your quality of life and reduce morbidity.
Yeah, that is a really interesting way of looking at things, that some of the exposures that are much maligned, like ultra-processed foods or even sitting down, quite frankly, they may be inherently bad and probably likely are, but they don't fully explain the chronic disease burden that we see, and much of it is likely explained by the opportunity cost. When you're sitting all day, what are you not doing? Well, you're not doing high intensity exercise, and when you're filling up with a lot of calories from ultra processed foods, what are you not eating? What is being displaced from the diet? I like the way that you're looking at that. When you think about phytochemicals and you think about I guess specific phytochemicals and known pathways that are activated, and the fact that to my knowledge there's tens of thousands of these things, probably many we don't yet fully understand or haven't identified. As a listener, what's the best way of approaching this? Is it the age-old kind of saying of eat the rainbow and just trying to incorporate lots of color and different plant foods into your diet across the week? Or are there specific phytochemicals or specific food or food groups that you think people should really focus on?
I think, if we want to keep it simple, where you don't maybe have to dedicate a lot of energy and resources to optimizing diet at a high level, I think simply adding plant-based food will get you to this goal, because the phytochemicals that are known to work hormetically are found in such an abundance of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, that simply just adding any of these plant foods will get you to your goal. Now, we do know that there are certain phytochemicals that work hormetically. We know from lab-based studies their mechanism of action and the specific cellular stress responses that they activate. So you can do a more targeted approach. So for example, there are 10 phytochemicals that we know work in this manner. Resveratrol, that's in grapes and berries, pistachios, dark chocolate. We know that that can activate our antioxidant defenses, a sirtuin response, autophagy, DNA damage response, our inflammatory response. We know sulforaphane which is in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, arugula. It can also be a very potent activator of our antioxidant defenses. And allicin and garlic, onions, shallots also stimulates growth factor through allowing calcium into these pores that activate growth. The list also includes quercetin, capsaicin, curcumin, ferulic acid, EGCG, genistein, luteolin. So you can create a targeted approach, and you can also approach it as what cellular stress response you would like to optimize. So, for example, if you said, look, I want to optimize mitochondrial biogenesis, activate the sirtuin response in particular, you can focus on, for example, resveratrol, quercetin, EGCG, genistein. We know that those in particular are potent stimulators of the sirtuin response. So you can certainly do this in a great degree of detail. I have some of this in the book and to break it down, but I think one of the biggest goals is, number one, just get more plant food. Number two, plant-based diversity. And this is so key because the more diverse your intake of plant food, the more you are taking in the abundance of the phytochemicals that are around. So, I think as a rough rule of thumb, largely driven by what we understand from fiber, the recommendation is 30 or more plant food. But I think that would be a very nice extrapolation to getting the phytochemical diversity that you need. What's really profound when you look at this in a historical context is that the Homo sapiens diet of our hunter-gatherer ancestors contained over 3,000 plant species. I mean, really profound. But by necessity, our ancestors had to subsist on diversity of edible foods to get the caloric intake to survive. Current state is that out of the 30,000 edible foods in this world, we cultivate around 150, and only about 30 of those are making it to our plates each year. So this reduction of diversity, which has been part of, again, the cost of comfort, like you mentioned, the cost of the convenience, the cost that has come from adding food processing technology to avoid starvation, the cost of adding food preservation where the food is around the clock. These have all contributed to such a shift in our dietary intake that has removed us from these stressors that our bodies have grown to depend on to thrive.
That makes you want to go down to the local farmer's market and get the different varieties of apples and peaches and plums and potatoes and just mix things up a little bit more.
100%. I mean, there are like 10,000 varieties of just tomatoes alone, right? I mean, we don't even scratch the surface of the abundance and the variety that's available to us.
Yeah, I'm also pretty conscious of trying to use and cook with as much herbs and spices as I can, because I know they're like particularly phytochemical rich, I guess, on a per gram basis.
Yes. Yeah.
You mentioned ECGC, so that's found in green tea, I believe.
Yes.
Among other foods, but particularly rich in green tea, and genistein in soy foods, right?
Correct.
I am absolutely excited to share an exclusive offer with the Proof community. This is a limited time offer just for my audience, and no doctor referral is needed. Function Health is a comprehensive at-home blood testing service that gives you access to over 100 biomarkers, covering everything from heart, liver, kidney, and metabolic health to hormone levels, inflammation, and nutrient status. That, my friends, is 5 times more testing than the average physical. I chose Function for my own blood work and to be a sponsor of this show because they are the best in the world when it comes to helping you understand and own your health. It's true, the depth and quality of their testing is unrivaled. And as regular listeners of this show will know, you cannot optimize what you don't measure. Don't guess, test. Use Function to know exactly where your health is today, and then intervene with evidence-based medicine and lifestyle changes to feel your best and reduce your risk of chronic disease. With Function, you get access to very important markers like Lp(a), a genetically driven cardiovascular risk factor, ApoB, the most predictive marker of atherosclerosis, and LH and FSH, reproductive hormones typically missing from standard lab panels. It's not uncommon for these biomarkers and others to be elevated. For example, over 50% of Function members have an ApoB level, and over 20% have an Lp(a) level that is above the optimal range. You can even add on harder to access tests like cystatin C, a very sensitive marker of kidney function, as well as selenium and iodine, nutrients that are essential for thyroid and overall health, yet rarely tested. So what are you waiting for? Run over to functionhealth.com/Simon Hill today and be one of 1,000 listeners to score a $100 credit. That's functionhealth.com/Simon Hill.